Hi, I'm Sandy Ray, founder of Sandra E. Ray CPA, where we alleviate financial headaches so that you can create a bigger impact. Today we have with us Michelle Boyd. Michelle is a veteran and family-owned small business and offers grant administration and project program management and financial support solutions to make your business operations more efficient. She began Greenline Solutions with one thought in mind. How can we make companies leaner and more efficient in their processes to help them grow? Throughout her time in education and in the military, she has seen redundant processes that get used over and over again, and she wanted to make a change. She has over 15 years of experience in multiple roles as a teacher, campus administrator, and central office administrator. Throughout these past 15 years, she has worked to support multiple programs with compliance, oversight, including federal funded grant programs. Michelle has a BS in education with English and an M.Ed in educational administration. She is also a certified Texas contract developer and certified Texas contract manager. Additionally, she is a certified charter school business officer, and with this certification includes training on accounting, financial reporting, audit support, budget planning, federal laws and policies, needs assessments, improvement planning, as well as strategic planning. Michelle loves to do anything with the outdoors, like hiking, boating, camping, biking, paddling, you name it. And as a Texas-based business, she loves the UT Longhorns, and as a Michigan native, she wants me to say, go blue.
And I know you're from Indiana, so
Yeah.
thank you.
How are you this
Thanks.
morning?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Well, I'm sorry I botched that bio so much, but wanted to make
You're
sure that
fine.
we got it all in there so everybody understands what a wonderful background that you have and how experienced you are. And I know that we are working together with a client. That's how we met. And I can tell you she's done wonderful things for them. And I'm so pleased to be associated with her.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Likewise. Absolutely. It's been interesting. A lot of my experiences in the educational field, and so kind of stepping out of that field and going in a different direction recently has kind of been a little scary, but I mean, it's the same world. Grants are grants, so it's the same world, really.
Well, I'm glad you're challenging yourself because, like I said, you're doing a wonderful job for our mutual client. And I'm so glad that you're involved in that. And having seen what you can do for an organization firsthand, I wanted to invite you here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was very humble when I got the email from you for this. I was like, oh, really? Like, huh? Okay, well, I'm doing something right.
Yes, you are. So let me ask the first question I have for you today. And generally, this first couple of questions are around grant accounting. What are some of the biggest challenges that are faced by nonprofit organizations when it comes to grant accounting?
Well, so here's the thing that I've noticed is that the nonprofit will secure grant funding and then has no idea what to do next. And they submitted this most amazing budget with the grant application. And so now they're like, okay, what now? And they don't understand a lot of the things that have to come with not just the grant accounting, but also the compliance that is required as part of that grant award, whatever that could be, because each foundation that awards grants or agency, they can all require something different, as we've seen with the client that we have. And with every funder, there's been a different way of needing to submit documentation. And there's been a different way of keeping track and accounting for all of the expenditures. So it really just, it can get confusing, and it can get confusing quick if you're not careful and if you don't pay attention to your contract that you make for the grant and also the deliverables.
Yeah, especially when we start adding multiple grants, that just
Mhm.
exponentially expands the confusion sometimes, I
Sure does.
think.
Yeah, when you have multiple allocations for the same expenditure going to different grants, you've got to be really streamlined and pay attention to every percentage that you are doing and making sure that communication is really sound too, that you have a very clear understanding of what it is that the client wants to do with the funds. And also, when you're supporting in this situation, you need to have a solid understanding of what is allowable with those funds in turn. So all of that plays into the accounting for grants.
Yeah. So that
Mhm.
really leads into my next question about what are some of the best practices for ensuring that we are accounting and our processes are compliant with our grants?
Well, in the educational field, compliance is everything because that's how you get a renewed funding stream. And likewise in a nonprofit world, when you're working with organizations, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to, again, every deliverable that is part of the expectation of the contract that you enter into. But also, I think one of the best practices is making sure that you have an open line of communication with your funder. And if you have a question that you have the ability and the comfort level to be able to email and say, hey, can we set up a conversation real quick? Because I have a question on how to report this, or I need to amend my budget and need you to walk me through how to do that. And it's okay because I've done that. I've made a point to do that in the educational fields with all of the funders, especially in the state of Texas. We're working with the TEA. And then in the state of Michigan, when I was there, we're working with the Department of Education up there. And so you really need to make sure that you have your T's crossed and your I's dotted when it comes to those agencies. And just making sure that you have a go to person that you're comfortable and can communicate with. And I've never had the experience of anyone saying, why don't you know that already? Or any of those types of things. They're always like, oh my gosh, yes, let's have that conversation. We want to make sure that you're as supported as possible. And I think sometimes organizations are a little hesitant to set up those lines of communication or to reach out in that way, whereas I encourage it.
Yeah, that's been my
So,
experience too. When we've reached out to the funder and said, hey, we have a question. How do you want this? Or we're in a gray area here. We want to make sure that we're interpreting it the same way that the staff members at the funders organization really want us to get those resolved now rather than later, and extremely helpful.
yeah, because they have a deadline too. They have to do the reporting and all of the things that they have to do. And so it really depends on the grantees and the recipients to be able to get all of those things to them in a timely fashion. And again, it's really talking. If you need to work it out, like have that think space, have that chat. Mhm.
Wonderful. So, kind of like along with best practices, I mean, we all have technology. What are some great ways to leverage technology to streamline our processes? And I know you know this because you've done, I've seen it in action and it's wonderful.
Thank you. Well, we have a lot of internal process that we do as part of Greenline, but it depends on where the client is and what is needed for that specific foundation or for the grant that they're working with or grants, multiple grants. So, I mean, we have our basic things that tools that we've set up. A lot of those things are through Google Sheet and Excel, believe it or not. Some of the most basic systems to work with, but you have the most complex tracking. And so I really find that that is for us, it's most effective, but then also tweaking things to meet where your client's needs are. So if they're telling you, hey, we really like this, but we would like to see if it can include these areas also, and being able to come up with that. Also, as part of the compliance documentation game that comes with the grants, having a really good handle on using, like we use Adobe, and being able to get in and create those PDF files and be able to really utilize the tools in that system, that was very, very helpful, especially when we have to compile 60 plus pages of documentation for a fiscal report, and being able to kind of jump right in and start putting multiple PDFs into one document, receipts and whatnot. So it really helps for you to be able to have a wide breadth and knowledge of a lot of technology platforms, but sometimes the most basic are the ones that we use the most.
Let me tell you, the system that she set up is for this mutual client has been really great, and I'm very appreciative of it. We were involved in the planning and flow charting process, and we were able to, everybody that was involved was able to go to Michelle and say, hey, here's the parameters that we have to live within. And she was able to adapt the flow chart and the process, and it was very wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. That's part of the name, solutions. We try to figure it out, you know.
So I'd like to ask maybe one or two more questions. I know we're going a little bit long, but what do you think are, like, for nonprofits, especially like small organizations, we have to keep up with all kinds of regulations, federal, state, local, the grant requirements. What's the best way to keep up to date on those latest changes?
As many webinars as you possibly can sit in. That's my go-to, especially when I was in the educational field working with the MDE and the TEA. I signed up to for everything, and just to make sure that I was completely abreast of any new policy changes. And likewise, in the state of Texas, I do the same thing to make sure that we're following any policy changes that have happened with any of the state, like, compliance requirements, reporting requirements. State of Texas is pretty tough when it comes to finance, and especially in the school districts, with who you can contract with and how you can contract with them for necessary repairs to your buildings or what have you. So it really is just a matter of being very resourceful and finding out when these things are happening again. It goes back to communication, and then signing up for them and making sure that you're just staying on top of it. I try to stay ahead of it, not just on top of it. So then that way I can advise more soundly, really.
So, like, when you have clients, you're really the resource for them for this, because you're keeping abreast of it for all of your clients in the wide variety of changes. So they don't have to all the time. I mean,
It,
they should be aware, but they can rely on you and ask questions.
yeah, exactly. And that you are like the point of contact for that client. And so likewise, it's not just for the state in which we are conducting our business out of, it's also for the states in which the client is in. So our mutual client is in Massachusetts. So one of the first things we did was take a look at, okay, what are the agency laws and rules? What government codes do we need to be aware of, and really kind of reading into those things. But there again, you have to go after it because it's not going to come to you.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. My last question really has to do with avoiding some pitfalls. What are some of the common mistakes that nonprofit organizations make when it comes to grant compliance?
Well, confusion when they're making allocations is definitely one of the biggest things that I've noticed. And when I say that, I mean, like, if you're working with multiple grants and not having a solid grasp on if it's a 50-50 split, that's one thing. That's easy. But if you're allocating something out 3 or 4 different ways, and let's say 10% goes to this grant, 15 goes to this grant, all the rest of it goes to this, you've got to pay close attention to that, because each of those grants are going to have a different way of reporting compliance that's going to be required. And can you take that same receipt and can you use that same receipt? Or is there going to be something else, as we've discovered with our mutual client, is there going to be something else that's going to be an expectation? And then quickly turning around and meeting that expectation. So I think really just paying attention to the details.
Thank you. Is there anything that you wanted to say in closing to just kind of sum up what accounting and compliance type of things for organizations?
I mean, really, if you're not sure, You definitely want to have a partner there with you that is going to be able to help get you not just the grant, if that's what you're looking for, but then also what we call cradle to grave. So you secure the funding, but then you also have the support to go through that funding cycle. And then when you have that support, then it allows you to focus more on the intention of that grant. So, whatever that grant is meant to do for your foundation, that's what we want you to focus on. Let us take the nitty gritty behind all of it and run all of that behind the scenes so that you can give 100% to whatever it is that you are working toward.
I think that's a wonderful note to end on. And I think that's really the key reason that both you and I are in business, so that people who
Yeah.
know what they're doing when it comes to the mission can really focus on that. So
Mhm. Yeah,
that was
definitely.
wonderful. So just to wrap up, I hope this was helpful for everyone. And if you have any questions on this or other topics, please let us know in the comment section. Of course, we always appreciate your likes. Want to thank you for joining us today. And remember that creating a bigger impact starts with stopping the nonsense. If you're dealing with nonsense in your nonprofit organization, we'd love to help you cut through the noise.